Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema. Sit down, we are once again back at it, dark and very, very early in the morning on a Wednesday, and if that's the case, you know there's only one thing we could possibly be talking about right now. Maybe my shirt is a hint at who we might be talking about, but if you want to know, why don't you pull up a chair? Take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler free into episode 2 of What If, entitled What If T'Challa Was Star-Lord. This is what I was looking for last week. Now, granted, when I went back and rewatched What If, Peggy Carter was Captain, or What If Captain Carter was the first Avenger, was the title of last week's episode. And even on going back and watching that one, specifically the second and third times I watched it, it got drastically better for me. Like, it just, you notice more, you pick up on more things, but overall, like I was saying last week, is they really just retold the first Avenger story, almost beat for beat. And that kind of threw me a little bit, because I was figuring like we would get into these worlds and have like totally different stories. And that's what happens when you get to T'Challa as Star-Lord. The changes in the universe that happen because Star-Lord is T'Challa instead of Peter Quill, they're so big that, like, you're not getting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 with T'Challa. You're getting a very different look at what, the Ravagers and Yondu and Star-Lord look like because T'Challa is that guy. And the changes that they make from Peter Quill as Star-Lord to T'Challa as Star-Lord were hysterical. A lot of, it's one of those, the changes make so much sense. They're so in tune with the character. But they also are really, really funny because they're so drastically different from what Peter Quill is. And that's the stuff that I was getting excited for and hoping for with the What If. Like, diving in and starting at a point that should be familiar to us, but then really seeing a diversion from that path. And granted, like I was saying last week, the Captain Carter episode makes sense in the sense that, you have the, sacred timeline. And with the sacred timeline, like Captain Carter, that makes sense, right? Like, you follow the main beats, but you can have divergent changes. And what's cool is here, you do, to a degree, kind of hit some of the same beats. But things really change in this world. And I think it points to the fact that, within the universe that we know as the MCU, I think there are very important beats in the Captain Carter story that you have to hit, whereas the Star-Lord story, there are certainly important parts, but shifting it so much to be someone like T'Challa really can allow the world to change. And the changes they make inside of this one were just awesome. I mean, from character concepts, like the look and feel of some of the characters is very different this time around, to the decision making of what to do with certain characters and which characters to bring in. While it was a lot of characters that I expected, there were a few curveballs where I was like, oh, damn, that's what's going on? That's pretty freaking dope. And I really enjoyed where they took the story this week. Now, when it comes to the animation, I think the animation this week popped even more than it did last week. Oh man, they do some really... Space in general is just always cooler than not space for me. If you have the right director and the right concept and you go to space, you can just visually do so much more with what's out there. Just from a visual standpoint, it always feels like space pops more than just regular stuff on Earth. And that certainly applies to the animation style. Like last week, how I mentioned lighting and how you light things inside of the animated world really helped create this very unique, while familiar, different feel for an animation style. That's you could almost double down on that this week. Like the way they use lighting this week, whoa, dude, there are some really cool things in this episode. And how they go about doing that and where the story takes us this time around, it was a lot of fun to just watch that animation work. And once again, head writer A.C. Bradley, I think, is really in tune to this Marvel Cinematic Universe. You know, like, if Yondu picks up T'Challa instead of Star-Lord, like, the ripple effect of what that is and how that changes that story feels very fitting and very in line with what you would expect based on now the characters that are involved. So it's a lot of fun, and I had like even more fun this week with what Bradley was able to do in the changes to the world that he has, because like I said, once again, the changes here are a lot bigger than they were in the Captain Carter story. And from a cast perspective, I mean, it was one of those things where as soon as I saw which episode, like the episode title was like, you know, what if T'Challa was Star-Lord? I was like, yes, we're gonna get like Chadwick Boseman, and the episode jumps in and is fun, like right out the gate, and that just allowed you to enjoy Chad doing T'Challa again. He's so good, and like even if he's not physically acting, the voice work is just so spot on for the character, and it was a lot of fun to be able to go on another adventure with T'Challa, specifically with Chad voicing. And one of the things that definitely caught me off guard, or I wasn't thinking about, was the fact that they would probably have some sort of a little like tribute or a message, you know, to like Chadwick. And when that hit at the end, man, did I do a 180. When we get to the spoiler review, you'll get to see my reaction, but like, really, like, where the episode leaves you, you're like having fun, then it's like, oh man, and then they drop the like tribute to Chad, and it, you know, it's just like it was some words on the screen, but immediately like reminded me of like all the emotion that seems to follow anything that Chad has done since he's passed. That's like come out. It continues to really hit me hard, and it's one of those, like I said, it I forgot that like this was his last thing that he had in the can, not Ma Rainey. So when it was like, what if was getting ready to come, and you're like, oh shoot, we're gonna get Chad one more time. It really did live up to what you would hope, and it's fitting that his final performance would be T'Challa in some shape or form. As far as the other actors that pop up, I don't want to really spoil or tip too many things, but obviously, you know, Yondu's involved, which means you're going to see some Ravagers. So you get Chris Sullivan back as Taserface, you get Sean Gunn back as Kraglin, and you, of course, get Michael Rooker back as Yondu himself. And I guess because of the trailers, we get Jaimin Hansu back as Korath. And man, did like everybody just have a lot of fun. Like from that group to, you know, some of the characters that pop up that I wasn't necessarily expecting to see in this world. I just thought everybody nailed it. And again, it just kind of speaks to the fact that like Marvel, for the most part, using the majority of its, you know, MCU talent as the voice talent here, it really does just connect it all in a way that feels very, very attached and stitched to the MCU. And even for some of the characters who have had their voices changed, right? Like, you had a different actor step in to be Steve Rogers last week. Like, the look and the feel, it just all lines up where you really do feel like you're watching these pocket stories from different universes that are offshoots of the MCU. Now, the thing that I'm most fascinated by, and I've been thinking about since last week, is will we see these universes actually, or these stories stitching together inside of one universe? Like how all our MCU stories have been one universe. When you watch the open and like you dive into that piece of glass that's Captain Carter, and then you see all those other shards inside of that piece of glass from the first break, it's like, are we diving into one specific universe where like maybe we could be forming some like alternate version of the Avengers? Or are these all actually just pocket universe stories that are eventually going to intertwine to the main MCU because the multiverse is broken. I'm just fascinated by all of that stuff, and there are times where like I kind of feel like maybe that's what's going on, but then when I think about other things we've seen in the trailers or just where we possibly could be going other storyline wise, I'm like, well, maybe it's not all one. So that's one of those things where certainly they don't tip that at all. And again, I just continue to have the feeling that like once we get like 3-4 episodes in, I think the bigger overall story is going to take form. And I'm hoping that if what they've done from just altering 2 stories can sync up to what they can do as far as tying it into the overall story, man, I really, really, really do think this is going to be a special show. And out the gate, it's been a very strong start. And easily, for me, this is my favorite of the first 2 episodes. And that means that I've pretty much just about finished what I was talking about. And if I'm all done with what I'm talking about, that means it's time for a score. So let's get the C-Maniacs on up. There are the boys. Last week we went 4 out of 5 for the Captain Carter episode. Got to give yourself some space for some wiggle room, but I really, really enjoyed that episode. This one did it a little bit more for me. I think the changes to the universe by replacing, one character with a different to be who that character ultimately is, with T'Challa being Star-Lord instead of Peter Quill. I like the fact that the changes were a lot bigger than what we saw last week, and you really saw the effects of how some of these altered stories can really change the universe. All of that really worked for me. I enjoyed the story. It was a lot of fun. Obviously, like it was so cool to hear, Chad Boseman voicing T'Challa. The animation was just kick-ass. The action was really badass this week, and slightly different to the way that you approach things. The idea of being in space and the type of story visually you tell, I like that the animation kind of lined up with that. And while, you had maybe a little bit more action, but probably about the same action as last week, like it hit in a little bit of a different way. So for me, what if Episode 2, what if T'Challa was Star-Lord? I gotta go 4.7 out of 5 C-Maniacs. I really dug this episode. I don't quite think you're at that 5 yet. Like, for me, I didn't have any downsides to this. I think everything hit perfectly. But I really think that once we get into the episodes that are starting to pull us into where we're going in the overall MCU story, those are just gonna hit harder. So 4.7 out of 5 C-Maniacs for the C-Man. Now I want to know what you're thinking, man. Hit those comments down below. Let me know what you thought of the story. What did you think of the changes? Keep it spoiler-free. We'll have the spoiler review in a little bit. But, what did you think of this week's changes as far as the Star-Lord story goes? And simultaneously the T'Challa storyline. Like, you kind of have this duality because it's a character that is a person, like the person is becoming the character, but there are things that are tied to that person. So there are really cool things going on this week. So let me know everything you were thinking there. What changes to what characters, did you think popped the most without spoiling anything? Where do you hope we're going? Did you enjoy this one more than last week? Did you think the changes were bigger this week and did that hit differently for you? What does this episode now have you excited for going forward? And if you haven't watched the episode, of course, are you stoked? Is it on your watch list? Are you going to watch it tonight? Is this, again, one of those things where you stumbled into the old cinema sit-down and were like, you know what? I wasn't going to watch this, but listen to the old C-Man, I'm in. Or are you just out? Whatever you're thinking, man. Good, bad, indifferent. What if Episode 2, what if T'Challa was Star-Lord, goes down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old C-Man as we approach talking spoilers in Episode 2 or just the rest of the season as we go along in our Wednesday morning runs. You want to be here for all that. You want to interact, be involved. You want to show a little love support, but you haven't yet, then come join C-Maniac Nation, man. It's a lot of fun over here, and we certainly have a good-ass time on Wednesdays. And if you haven't and you want to, all you gotta do is jump over there, man. Hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts, and until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man, and I am signing off. Peace. Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.